one championship remains in this stint of the European events, and that is the British GT series. However, I've not decided on which car it is I'll be using yet, so we're gonna have to do some digging to see what choices we have. I have a feeling that says I know what car it is I want to use, but at the same time, it depends on what else there is for me to use, because, well, I'm kind of thinking about using a TVR, since I haven't used one of those yet. Plus, I technically did use a Lotus Esprit earlier on in the game anyway, so that's not to say I can rule it out, but we'll see what we get. Choice-wise. Because I think there should be a TVR dealership nearby. And, okay, well, I've got no TVRs in here, so guess we'll just have to head over to TVR in the UK, since that's probably what my next best choice will be. Okay, so we got the Tamora, the T350C, the Tuscan, and of course the Cerberus, which I'm not going to use. I could use the T350C, since that's actually not too bad of an option. Well, I can buy this for a reasonable price, but I'd also better go and check at Lotus, just to see what the price is there. I think Aston Martin might be a little too expensive for this, but as ever, I am open to suggestions. Yeah, I think I'm going to choose a TVR for this, because I've already driven the Lotus Esprit prior to this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this. The TVR T350C, and I think the colour I'll use this thing in, let's go with... Actually, I haven't driven a car in orange yet. Or not recently, anyway. I'm at a bit of a loss here. Screw it. I'll buy this thing in purple. Because why not? I don't seem to recall myself driving a car in purple anyway up to this point. Might as well do that now whilst I'm here. Because I can. And before we do anything else, I think tuning is going to be required here, so I might as well get some of this out of the way. And yes, it did take me a few minutes to decide on which car it was that felt like the best option for me to use. So, racing flywheel, because, well, acceleration might be important here. And, of course, the carbon drive shaft as well, because, again, you can never have too much acceleration. And yeah, let's go with the twin clutch, because why the fuck not? And now, let's get down to engine tuning, see what we can get. I think the racing chip will do nicely, and well, I probably need, what, about 400 horsepower for this, so I don't think we really need anything more than 400 at the least. Since I had a look at my opponents and, well, they didn't really seem to be too much of a challenge. So I might as well just put on the unremovable engine parts just to make it easier. And yeah, gotta have the sports suspension, right? Just to make turning the car a little easier. And I think just to finish this off, let's put on Stage 1 weight reduction, and I'll get the Sport Soft tyres just in case. Okay, I think that should be everything we need. Don't really need to change anything visually, so I think we should be fine. Okay. Let's go now to the British GT series. UK cars only, normal or sport tyres, and pretty much any British branded car we can use to enter this event. This is what I can call the lovely stuff, as the tracks we're heading to are Grand Valley, Fuji Speedway 90s, is it? Yeah, it is. Then we've got Capitan, Sonoma Raceway, and last but not least, Midfield Raceway. And 45 grand if we can win overall, so let's go. And in terms of our competition, we have got 4 TVRs, 1 Aston Martin, and 1 Lotus. And as I would have expected, we do have another TVR T350C in this event. And because this thing is very much natural aspiration, well, we obviously weren't going to get the turbo parts. But now, after I've pretty much spent the last 8 minutes picking my car and doing all the tuning, let's get on with Race 1. Hopefully we should have everything we need. And as I have now established, well, the first few gears, like they are in the Tamora, they're pretty tightly tuned. But let's see how we go. As I now pass the Aston Martin for P3, and I'm now closing in on the TVR Tamora. I reckoned the 400 horsepower bracket was more or less where I needed to be in order to be competitive in this. And I figured it was only necessary for me to put on the necessary tuning in order to get to the end of this without too many dramas. So through the tunnel we go, and making sure that I do put together something solid. As I now pass the Lotus on the inside temporarily, he does the old switcheroo on me, and gonna slot in behind him. I kind of figured if there was going to be any opponent I would have in this, then the Lotus Esprit was going to be my most likely candidate for this. And Still cannot seem to get past him at the moment, but that's okay because we still have 2 more laps to get the needle threaded. And so far, we're doing pretty well. And getting a good run off the slipstream. And there is no 6th gear in this car, so looks as though 160 is more or less the maximum speed I can get out of this thing. But either way, that's okay, because I have now taken over the lead in my 2003 TVR Tamura. So, for want of a better phrase, I think this is going to be pretty easy for me to pull off. I did also make sure to put on weight reduction as well. Although I probably didn't need it, I was at least wanting to make sure that my car was at least stout enough to challenge the AI when we get to the trickier courses. In other words, the roads here at Grand Valley are relatively smooth. And the bumps this track has, well, I think they're almost non-existent, from what I know. The game said the points I would be scoring from this would be 113 points, but the way I see things right now, that's probably not going to be the case. Because I honestly believe at this time we are definitely in a position where it seems unlikely for this to really be too hard for me to put together an actual challenge, or for the AI to put together an actual challenge. Especially since I'm now virtually 6 seconds clear of the Lotus Esprit. So I think it's fair to say the engine tuning probably wasn't needed for this. But I still did it anyway because, well, with these things, sometimes you have to be sure. But it looks like the clean sweep for this one could be pretty easy from what I can see, as I'm now already 7 seconds now cleared by the Lotus. So hopefully we can manage to go somewhere with this. And bouncing on the curbs just a little bit, but able to keep everything in check. And now, looks as though we are nearly 8 seconds clear of the Lotus at this stage. And at this point, it looks like we're pretty much on our way to scoring an easy win, and that's what we do. Finishing with a 204.7 to finish this, and an almost 9-second victory over the Lotus. And I think the other TVR just finished as well. So that tells me engine tuning for this thing, in terms of the stage 1 tuning, it probably wasn't needed. But the other parts I think were needed. So, you know. 12 grand for winning, and these are your point standings after race 1. As it looks like the other TVRs, they're not really going to be a factor here for this whole thing. And I strongly believe the engine tuning probably isn't needed anymore. Because, well, we more or less have all the tuning parts we need. And also because, well, I won the previous race pretty comfortably. So, let's try and see how we do this time. And points have increased to 141 this time around. Something just fell over on my desk, but it wasn't near the microphone. So, I think we should be okay with this, from what I can see. Because since I'm using a more nimble car compared to everyone else, this should be pretty easy, right? As the other TVR tries to... Oh! Fuck me! Fuck me! Fuck me! Fuck me! Fuck me! Okay. That was a beautiful rotation. That was basically just a beautiful 360 I pulled off there. And quite surprisingly, my car actually stayed on track. That was honestly a beautiful spin, in spite of what I was fearing at the time. But either way, looks like we should be okay with this. Also, is it just me, or has that Tuscan had some tuning parts fitted to it? Something tells me there's been some tuning fitted to that TVR Tuscan. But either way, trying to keep everything under control. And the Lotus now passes me from the outside. However, I am, of course, in the draft, so I do believe I should be able to get a slingshot, or maybe not a slingshot. I think I know the weakness of this car. My top speed is in the low 160s, whereas the Lotus is able to do low 170s. But I don't think that should be too much of a problem, because my car is still relatively fast enough in the corners to get a pass done. That could have very much been the antithesis of what actually happened. But nonetheless, we now take over the lead once again. And since my car, I know, is faster through the corners than the Lotus, that's pretty much going to be where I don't have the Achilles heel. Compared, of course, to my top speed being only 162. Which, for want of a better phrase, in this race, from what I now know, is my Achilles heel. Running a little bit wide there, but I think I'm able to save it. Yes, I am. Mostly in control for that duration there. Probably hit the speed limiter once, maybe twice, but I think we should be fine with this. Because again, I did fit racing brakes to this car just in case. And the TVR Tuscan has now overtaken the Lotus. So, it's fair to say we could have an interesting battle for second. But then again, I figured the TVR Tuscan might be a contender for this championship, even though things didn't really work out for him very well at Grand Valley, where he finished P5, which was unfortunate for him, but either way, it looks like this is more or less going to be pretty easy for me to pull off, from what I can see. So there's a very real possibility that says we could end off the European events prior to the 1000 miles tournament. We could end this off with 2 clean sweeps, which, judging by the pace of my car at the moment, I would say that is very possible. Anyways, I win race 2 with a pretty handy margin because of my superior cornering speed, and for some reason my phone's voice recorder just turned on there. I have no idea why the fuck it did that. But anyway, there we go. 2 races down, and still 3 races to go. So the Lotus holds on to P2, as I'm now double the points of the Lotus, and the TBR Tuscan, as a result of him finishing runner-up in this race, now moves up to P3. So, I think it's fair to say these races are definitely easier than what the point scores would suggest, is what me thinks. But either way, there we go. 2 races down, and still 3 races to go. I reckon this is going to be pretty easy for us to pull off, as we are now at El Capitan. And before we do anything else, I probably don't need the racing chip on for this one. I'm convinced in saying we should be fine with this. I'll basically just keep the drivetrain parts on this thing because, well, that more or less seems to be what's keeping me at the front here. Plus, El Capitan, I don't think there's going to be a lot of problems here. I don't think, anyway. Unless we head to a race where speed is going to be absolutely essential. But personally, I wouldn't think so, because we've already passed the fastest track of this championship, which was Fuji, and in all honesty, because of my car's, well, I guess you could say nimbleness to get through the corners, it's fair to say that race was won pretty easily. I could have even used the TVR Griffith for this if I really wanted to, but unfortunately it wasn't available for me to buy. I chose the T350C because, well, I figured with enough upgrades it would be a sizable opponent for me to go up against. Well, it would be a sizable choice for me to use. So, yeah. Shit. That was quite a whack. But it's okay because we are up at the front, and it looks like we are very much going on to win this quite comfortably until the TVR Tuscan catches up to me. The points are definitely higher than they should be, and in all honesty, the genuine difficulty of this race, it's actually not that much. And if you're asking me if it was necessary for me to step on the brakes before the bridge, well, the answer to that is a very resounding yes. Because if I didn't, then my car would have hit the outside wall and then basically shot across the racetrack in an almost uncontrollable spin that would have basically given me a double whammy, if not a triple whammy. Which is what more or less would have costed me a few spots. But either way, it looks as though we're going to end off this stint of the championship with what will more or less be another domination streak. Had some competitive battles at times, but wasn't really threatened in terms of actually going for the championship here in Europe. And I strongly believe that this will be another easy win for me to slot in on my ever increasing resume of richness. And it very much looks like I'm giving my competition here a spanking. Which is what I would have expected. But anyway, 12-second lead over the Lotus Esprit. I highly doubt that's going to change, because I'm just so far ahead right now of everyone else. Needless to say that it only took me less than half a lap to basically take the lead and then pretty much dominate this race. And with almost no issues. But either way, I'm still pretty far ahead of everyone else. In spite of that little spin I had, I honestly don't really care because, well, I have a sizable lead at the front anyway. And I'm convinced in saying that partly the reason for that is because of my weight reduction. And I've hit that guardrail at the side of the bridge again. It's very easy to hit that if you get it wrong, and believe me, I have hit that guardrail next to the concrete at the side of the bridge many times. So, if you're asking me whether or not it's easy to get caught out by that, the obvious answer I can personally give is yes. But either way, doesn't matter because, well, I score a win yet again. 3 wins in a row. Which also means hat-trick for the TVR T350C. And as I would have expected, the Lotus came home in P2 once again. So, it's no real battle at this time over who precisely will be finishing P1 and P2. I think the results are very much speaking for themselves at the moment. Even though we have had a bit of a mix-up with, well, P3 down to P5. So, at least we can say that's something in terms of battles. But the top 2, however, yeah, I'd say that's more or less a resolved battle at this point. Because we both have sizable gaps at the top. Anyway. So we have just 2 races to go now. And it's fair to say that up to this point, we've been doing pretty well. Did I save any recent replays at El Capitan? I don't think I did. Oh yeah, that was the Toyota. Whatever, I won't change it. I don't think it really matters all that much. So a 14-point gap is what it is between me and the Lotus. And if I can just score points here at Sonoma, then I think the championship should without question be mine. Because with my car's superior handling and also nimbleness, I would say it's highly unlikely for me to be losing this championship on points at this stage. I can pretty much afford to lay back now, is what I think. I think whatever problems or worries we might have had at this point, they don't really seem to matter now, is what me thinks. Yeah, I'm convinced in saying that TVR Tuscan does have tuning fitted, because I'm pretty sure that's not the original engine sound of that TVR, from what I know. But either way, I very much look to be clinching what probably is going to be another easy win for me. The points are obviously higher than I think they should be, but nonetheless, I've managed to get through this pretty easily. And I think it's fair to say my choice for this event wasn't too bad either. And just giving the Tamura a little bit of a love tap there. Obviously, you know, nothing egregious. There's just a little bit of a love tap there as we got through the hairpin. Didn't really cause any problems. Was just a minor bump. And the Lotus Esprit is now in front of me once again. I've no doubts in saying that I'll probably just blitz the field once again by the time I've cleared him. Something that, from what I know at least, probably isn't going to be too hard to do at this stage. So, yeah. Pretty much just biding my time at the moment. I probably know I'm going to clear him before the end of this. That's why it's easier for me to bide my time as we get through the S's. And able to keep everything in check, as I'm now less than 2 tenths behind the O2 Esprit. very much sticking with him. Gets a little bit loose there off the corner, but I think I've now cleared him. And now I run wide through the hairpin again. But I clear him with relative ease. My corner exit was not going to be impacted in any way whatsoever. And now, I am at the front. And it took me up to the end of the second lap to get here. Although then again, as I said before, I was biding my time to make sure that I pulled off a legitimate overtake for the lead. And now that I am leading, this is probably going to be where I will stretch my legs. I'm convinced in saying the AI are not going to catch me here. Because by now, I probably have at least a 2-second lead, maybe a 3-second lead by now. It's probably more like 2 seconds at this point. But then again, the gap is increasing all the time, so it's probably going to be more than that. Huh. And now it's the other T350C who now takes over P2. I was not expecting that to happen, but either way, here we are. So, closer race than what I had in the first 3 up to this point. And I think it's fair to say this one is easily taken by me. With another 150 plus points on the board. And is the Aston Martin going to finish? Hey, everyone did finish. Let's go. So 1-2 for the TBR T350Cs. I can certainly say there have been some unexpected results up to this point. And now, the other TBR, as a result of him finishing P2, he now moves up to P3. So we've got a real battle going on here for the third placed spot. However, positions 1 and 2 at this point, well, as I said before, they're pretty much cinched by now, so you know. I think we're Gucci for this one, in terms of deciding P1 and P2. Alright, final race of the British GT Series. Are we going to get a clean sweep or not? And we are at Midfield Raceway Reverse. But I still believe we will. Because, well, I do have a relatively nimble race car here. So, I think the problems we may have here are going to be minimalistic at best. In terms of actually pulling this off, because, well, my car, I think out of everyone here, is probably the lightest. And that's probably the main reason why I have won these first 4 races as easily as I did. But this one, I think, is where it could get more challenging. Because we're on Midfield Raceway Reverse. Which, for want of a better phrase, is a bit of a wild card when it comes to just the racing altogether. Especially since I did discover that last time I raced on the reverse course in, I think it was the Supercar Festival, the last time I raced here at Midfield Reverse. But yeah, point is, it was a pretty crazy race, and I was somehow able to beat the, I think it was the Tommy Kyra I was racing in my Roof CTR Yellowbird. I think that's probably what the deal was. Am I gonna hit the speed limiter here? I surely hope I don't. So the TBR Tamora is in P2, as I have now cleared him. And had to shift down to second there, so I could get a decent-ish launch off the corner. And the gap is now less than a second to the Lotus Esprit. So hopefully gave him a little bump there, but nothing really egregious. And it would seem as though we are going to be putting together what will more or less be a run for the win, since I am right behind him now. Midfield Raceway reverse, it always does tend to be a bit of a wild card because of the bumps you have to go over. Plus, I did figure the AI were going to be stronger here, so that's why you're actually seeing a battle here. But, nonetheless, positions first and second for this championship, they were decided in the previous race, and able to hold my racing line and also stay on track, which is another good thing. Fending off from the Lotus, and it now looks as though this championship, providing I don't have a spin before the end of this, or hit the wall, or you get the point, this will more or less be another clean sweep for me. I'm pretty much cleared of the Lotus Esprit by now, so gotta say, these last two races, they were better than I thought they were going to be altogether. So, yeah. And it looks as though in a close-fought battle here at Midfield Raceway Reverse, I'm going to score the win. And another clean sweep by less than a second. And unfortunately, the TBR's occupation in P2 at Sonoma was short-lived, as it looks as though he is now going to, I think, drop down from P3 to P5, so unfortunately his race in the sun was short-lived. I think that's right. Yeah, that is right, yeah. So he drops down from P3 to P5. We had quite a battle from 3rd to 5th. And well, the Aston Martin in those other two races, I don't want to say he was the field filler like I would most of my opponents, but I would say he actually kept on reasonable tabs with the rest of us. So on this occasion, I won't refer to the Aston as the back marker, because he wasn't. He was actually pretty close. Closer than I thought he was going to be. So these are your final point standings. 50 points to me, 26 points to the Lotus Esprit V8, who finished P2 3 times with 2 third-placed finishers, and with the inconsistencies among positions 3 to 5, the other 3 TBRs had quite a battle. In the end, it was the Tamora that took P3, the Tuscan finished P4 on a tiebreaker with the T350C, because, well, the TBR finished P2 at Fuji, and I think also got a podium somewhere else. if I'm not mistaken. I don't know where, but either way, as a result of him scoring more podiums than the T350C, he ultimately wound up finishing in P4 in the end, because he had more podiums than the other T350C. And at the back, well, although the Aston Martin finished last in every race, he actually wasn't too far back from the rest of the field, so I don't think I'll call him the field filler. I'll say it was just unfortunate in that DB9. But anyway, yeah. 50, 26, 17, 16, 16, and 5 are your final point scores for the British GT Series. Now we move on. And the car we are going to get here is quintessentially British. And I say that well because you probably know what's coming up. So for winning the British GT Series, we get a Jag. And we also get it in black as well. A lot like the British taxis, you see. But yeah, that's what we get. We get a Jag. A really cool Jag. And also a quintessential Jag. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. So, that's now all but one championship finished in the European race events, as all we have left is 1,000 miles. And if we can win that, we'll get 300 grand, but I'm gonna leave that until a bit later on because, well, I have other things I need to get through first. But either way, there we go. Clean sweep in the last two championship events of Europe. I think that's right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right, from what I know. So, actually, I sweeped the last 3 championships in Europe, if I'm not mistaken, because I also sweeped the Hot Hatch League as well. So we move up another 1%, as we're now up to 41.4%, and our win ratio has now moved back up to 86, as a result of our last 3 championship events becoming clean sweeps. And I drove a total in the end of 44 miles in this thing. And in the Alfa Romeo, I drove a total of 67 miles. I don't know how many miles we drove altogether, but we're definitely over 1,100 miles by now, so let's now find our Jag. And it's this, the Jaguar E-Type in black. I believe we will have some usage for this car at some point in the future, because I really want to use the Jag. But yeah, there it is. The quintessential Jag is now ours. And next time, I think we're going to go back to the driving missions, because we have 2 one-lap magic sections to get through, so I think that's what we're going to do next. So, next time on Gran Turismo 4. Driving missions, one-lap magic, part 1.